Buff Dudes, 5,000 calories bulk day of eating. The internet keeps giving, so I keep reacting. Today we continue with my nutritionist review series and we review the Buff Dudes, aka brothers Hudson and Brandon White. The White brothers have amassed a following of nearly 2.5 million subscribers, so let's see if they are buff or more like buffoons.
What's up, dudes and girls? In this video, I'm going to be going over the foods that I have every day, the amount of calories, and also the macronutrients that's really going to help me put on as much muscle mass as possible.
Okay, great. Let's just say right off the bat though that there is a big difference between being ripped and bulky and being healthy. You can certainly be ripped and bulky and healthy if the foods that you are eating are healthy, and there is growing evidence to suggest that the muscle mass index can be a good predictor of longevity in older adults. The problem today that you can see on social media is that a lot of weightlifters and bodybuilders are simply throwing absolute garbage down their necks. So let's see what the buff dudes are actually eating.
It's the first meal of the day, it's gonna be breakfast, and I try to wake up pretty damn early because I have a lot of food to consume, and the earlier you wake up, the more time you have to eat. And I really try to keep the time frame between my meals at least 2 hours, if not more.
Just a little, 1,096 calories to start the day.
Up to 3 hours. That way my body has time to digest, I have time to go through the various processes to use the calories before eating my next meal. If I'm eating one meal and then I'm still full, it's gonna be really hard to eat my next meal, especially because almost each meal is gonna be containing 1,000 calories.
I applaud anyone who has the dedication to look after their body and eat healthy, but food should always be enjoyable, and I can't imagine cramming calories in every few hours is going to be particularly enjoyable. It would just become very monotonous.
Now that meal number one is out of the way, I want to talk about food, because obviously without food, you're not gonna get calories, you're not gonna get macros, and you're not gonna make gains.
First piece of truth there.
And thankfully, Hudson actually just recently did a video on our favorite bulking foods, which, as you can see in that video, we keep it pretty simple, and that's what I'm gonna be doing today.
Simple is good. The vast majority of your calories should be coming from whole foods or as close to whole foods as you can get. So let's see what his interpretation of simple means.
For my carbohydrate sources, I usually just stick with rice, with beans, with oats, with fruits. With fats, I'll usually stick with nuts of any kind, obviously a little bit of oils here and there for cooking, and also getting it from animal products like beef, steak, or salmon.
It's all about context with foods like beef and salmon. Small amounts are never really going to be problematic, but if you're eating high amounts over the longer term, then it may indeed cause problems. It's for this very reason why health organisations around the world have guidelines with the amounts of red meat and fish that someone should consume.
Obviously with my proteins, I'm gonna get a lot of sources from animal products like milk, eggs, and meats, but I was really lacking in the quality of the meat I was having in the past.
Okay, therein lies the problem with this dietary pattern. The World Health Organization and other health organizations recommend predominantly whole food, fruit and vegetable intakes to get your calories, proteins, carbs and also fats. Buff dudes, and we don't need to worry about those guidelines. I'm just gonna nail their animal foods to get my protein.
Thankfully, me and my girlfriend sat down and we did some research and really tried to find a company that provided really good quality meats at an affordable price.
Or a company who are going to pay you a pretty little penny to push their products.
And thankfully, that's when we found ButcherBox. We went to their website, we checked them out, and we also kind of figured out how they worked. You know, we saw that they delivered straight to your door, which is obviously very convenient.
That is all very well, but you're going to be consuming these foods way above the recommended levels. So it doesn't matter if it comes in a pretty little box, that's not going to protect you from the saturated fats, etc.
The box is very customizable. They have a wide range of different cuts. We have grass-fed beef, which we're really happy about. They have USDA certified organic chicken. They have wild-caught fish like salmon and cod. So a lot of variety, and it was super affordable. So we're happy that we found them, especially on a bulk when I'm consuming a lot more food. It just makes me feel so much better that I'm putting good quality foods into my body.
The oceans are getting cleaned out at an unprecedented rate, but it's okay as long as we can overeat and also bulk.
So not only do I have the good carbohydrates, now I have the great animal products that I can eat that really provide me with kind of proteins that I need.
You mean the unnecessary proteins that you are consuming at a very high rate. The proteins that you could easily switch to fruit and vegetable sources.
And as you know, with summer coming, there's gonna be a lot of barbecuing, and ButcherBox has you covered because they are doing a barbecue bundle. They're celebrating barbecue season with a bundle of your grill favorites free in your first box. And that's gonna include 2 New York strip steaks, 6 burgers, and 5 pounds of chicken drumsticks in your first box. So make sure you click the link in the description below to find out more details.
I thought that sales pitch was never going to end.
My post-workout protein shake is really going to consist of proteins and carbohydrates. Now, one, as we talked about earlier, protein is really going to be the building blocks of that lean muscle mass, but also carbohydrates to really get those glycogen stores back up, to spike the insulin a little bit more anabolic, but also really start the recovery process of those muscles to make sure I can get in the gym even quicker. So that post-protein workout shake, it feels damn good, it feels very replenishing, and I love having it after my workout.
So 676 calories in that shake, just around 100 or so coming from whole foods. The rest is processed refined sugars and also processed refined proteins.
Post-workout protein shake is in the books, and now I want to talk about calories because the question can arise, well, how many calories do I need to put on muscle? And
I really look forward to this explanation.
There's quite a few formulas out there to try to help you with a good starting point. One we like to use is the TDEE calculator, or Total Daily Energy Expenditure Calculator, that we've talked about many times in the past, and it really gets your BMR and then adds activity level on top of that. But again, there's a lot of different formulas you can use, and they're all really gonna say pretty similar calories for each person. For me, for instance, I'm around the 3,500 to 3,800 calories to bulk.
So the basal metabolic rate of someone his size, just to maintain his current weight, is around 2,400 calories a day, give or take. So we're saying this calculator recommends 3,500 to 3,800 calories, which is 1,100 to 1,400 calories over his basal requirements. So just keep that in the back of your mind as we go forward. So the average person will need to eat 500 calories a day over their basal requirements to put on approximately 1 pound per week. So the calculator is saying around 3,500 to 3,800 calories, and he is consuming actually 5,000 calories, which is over 2,500 calories more than his body requires. For a normal average healthy person, they would put on around 4 to 5 pounds per week eating this amount.
So what I did is I started with that range. I started with around 3,800 to 4,000, and I would weigh in every week to kind of get my average weight to see if the amount of calories I was having, it was actually working, it was putting on weight. If it was going too fast or too slow. Well, when I was having around 4,000 calories, I noticed that I wasn't really putting a lot of weight on, so I bumped it up 10% or so.
The reason that it is not working is that his metabolism is working overtime to prevent much of this being stored as fat. Correct, there is a tipping point, and at some point your body will cross this, and then you will start adding weight to your body.
Next meal is going to be lunch, and this meal is going to be a little bit lower in fats, higher in carbohydrates, and higher in protein. Now, the reason it's lower in fats is because I'm using some very lean turkey meat from Butcher Box. It's very delicious, and I'm going to be barbecuing it up because, of course, in the spirit of the barbecue season, you can't forget the barbecuer, and it just tastes so damn good having those burgers and sweet potato fries. So this is a massive amount of protein and carbs, which feels really good in the middle of the day, and this is one of definitely my favorite meals.
Like I said earlier, I applaud anyone who looks after themselves and leads a healthy lifestyle. But does anyone who is watching this video believe that 5,000 calories a day, many of which are coming from animal sources, is actually healthy? A good analogy for this would be buying a new car. If you look after the car well, keep it serviced and don't thrash it, then the car will be good for around 100 and 150,000 miles. What this guy is doing with his body is thrashing the car around unnecessarily, and at some point it will break down.
And then I continued to do that until here we are. I'm eating 5,000 calories a day, and it seems like my body's reacting pretty well with the amount of calories I'm having now.
What can I say? It's good to see some greens on his plate, but again, it's over nutrition.
Lunch is done, and now I want to talk about macronutrients. Macronutrients, of course, being carbs, fats, and proteins. Now, what are some of the ways that you can figure out your best macronutrient percentages?
Okay, you mean the macronutrient percentages that scientists have been looking at in detail for decades. It's the reason why health organisations around the world recommend that carbohydrates are optimal at around 55 to 75% of our calories. Protein should be around 15%, and fat should be around 15 to 30% of calories. Now, these are not static and rigid numbers that you have to bind to on a daily basis. They are guides because we know that people who adhere to these guidelines more often than not will have much better health outcomes. But no, Mr. Buff Dude doesn't care about any of this. He wants you to work out your macro ratios based on some random Google calculator.
Everyone's gonna be a little bit different, but the main important thing is to always track. Track your weights on the scale and make sure what you're eating is continuing to make you gain weight.
No, I would say that you are going well over the recommendations of any health organisation in the world.
Well, sometimes, much like calories, it can be a little bit of a trial and error. Everyone's gonna be a bit different. Now, for instance, for me, I'm going a higher carbohydrate diet and a higher protein diet. So as you can tell in my percentages, I'm going 45% carbohydrates, 25% fats, and 30% protein. So I'm going on the higher end of the carbs and proteins and lower end of fat. So
again, what he is eating here does not fall in line with any healthcare recommendations around the world.
I'm having 0.5 grams of fat per pound of body weight, and I'm having 1.5 grams per pound of body weight in protein. So on the higher end of protein, you can get away with 1 gram per pound of body weight for sure, but I'm going a little bit higher, and I'm filling the rest of my macronutrient percentages with carbohydrates. That's 2+ grams of carbohydrates per pound of body weight. So
okay, but does he actually think that nailing fats and saturated fats will have no consequence in his body?
that is an easy way for me to figure it out. And obviously everyone's gonna be a little bit different. Maybe some people are a bit more carb sensitive, so instead of either carbs being extremely high, they're gonna adjust their fats a little bit high. And the good thing about fats, of course, since they're 9 calories per gram rather than 4 calories per gram like carbs and protein, you obviously can eat less food, less volume of food, and still have a high amount of calories. So that's one good thing about fats, is they provide you with a lot of calories even though the volume isn't there. But again,
no, we are really not that different. We are all made of the same cells, tissues, and organs. The difference on how all of this will react is largely dependent on what we eat, the state of our microbiome, and the environment in which we live. Our ancestry comes from primates. Do you ever see a primate in the wild say, actually, I'm going to skip over my species-specific diet and I'm going to load up on the fats and protein?
Meal number 4, it's gonna be a snack, and it's gonna be oatmeal, it's gonna be a scoop of whey protein, but it's also gonna be a pretty high amount of fat. So a lot of almonds on that. Make sure I'm getting the proper amounts of fat, and it's really just a nice meal to have between 2 other meals. And again, you know, eating this much food, you want to make sure you're not still full from lunch, so you want to make sure you have time to digest before all of a sudden overloading your body with more carbohydrates and fats. But this meal, honestly, is pretty easy to get down for me.
It's like deja vu, that meal. I know I've seen it before.
With meal number 4 out of the way, I want to talk about some of the tools that you can use in order to make sure you're always on track. Obviously, number 1 is going to be a food scale. This is making sure you know the amounts of foods you're having. But with a food scale, you can also use a calorie tracking app. Now, we use an app called MyFitnessPal, but that can be an easy way to log everything. And much like we were talking about tracking your calories and macros to see how you respond, well, this is going to be some of the tools that can help you do that, obviously.
There is nothing wrong with using apps to see how you are tracking for hitting your goals, but your goals should always be health focused and not aesthetics focused.
You can see the macronutrient percentages, you can see the amounts of food and calories. A weight scale for your body is going to be a very useful tool as well, to weigh in a couple times a week, to track your weight and to see your averages, to see the foods that you're having, if it's actually putting on weight or not, so you can adjust accordingly as well.
Yes, that is all fine, as long as you are a nice healthy weight and you are eating a nice healthy diet to get there. So just a very quick interrupt here to say, as always, I'm offering the stool test, organic acid, SIBO test and consult via my website. So if you have any health or digestive issues, then consider taking these tests, as they will provide a lot of very useful information upon which you can start making informed decisions and then start getting your health back on track. And finally, remember to click the subscribe button and bell notifications, as I am now running a monthly competition where I will be selecting 2 people a month, where I will be providing free health consults. Winners will be chosen and announced on the 1st of each month. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
The last meal, it's gonna be dinner, and it's gonna be a 10-ounce New York strip steak from Butcher Box. One of my favorite cuts of theirs. I get it all the time. It's a great way to get a lot of protein and fats in, but I'm also having more carbohydrates with the 2 cups of rice, and also the cottage cheese as well. So another big meal to end this out, but I try to have it relatively early in the evening. I don't want to have dinner too late, because of course you're not really doing a lot in the evening, nighttime. So I don't want to have a huge meal and then immediately just lay down to go to sleep, because that's really horrible for digestion. You want to make sure
Nails loads of animal proteins and fats, and his actual concern is eating later in the evening. Genius.
you're still a little bit active after dinner, so that way you can go to bed and feel good after a big meal like this. That was it, a full day of eating, all the calories, all the macros. Hopefully this helps you guys out.
No, certainly offered no help for me, my friend.
And one last thing I do want to talk about is making sure you have structure, making sure you bring all this together and building a food program for yourself. Because of course, much like the gym, you don't want to go to the gym and not have a plan, not have a goal, not have something written down so that way you know exactly what you're going to be doing on that day. Eating is no different. You want to make sure you build the eating program so that way every day you know exactly what you're going to eat, how much you're going to eat. You can just look at it and say, cool, I'm eating this for that meal, I'm going to eat that for that meal. And you don't even have to think about it. So that is going to be a huge help and to make sure you're always progressing in the right direction.
Sounds like no fun to me, always checking what you are eating, swallowing down repeatedly the same foods over and over again. I can't think of anything worse.
I just want to say a huge thank you to ButcherBox for making this video happen. I've been using them for quite a while now and I couldn't be happier. And much like me, they love the barbecue season and they are celebrating.
Sorry, I'm done with another sales pitch. Let's delve in and see where he tracked for the day. So as I said earlier, a guy of his metabolic profile would need a basal calorie intake of around 2,400 calories just to maintain his weight. His caloric intake for the day was around 5,050 calories. In terms of his macros, he was much lower on carbs compared to protein and fats. He ate around 451 grams of protein, give or take, and around 170 grams of fat, which are excessively high. In terms of carbs, unbelievably, despite eating over 5,000 calories, he only consumed around 53 grams of fibre, which is above the daily recommendations, but I'm just perplexed how that can be so low given the caloric intake. In terms of fats, he ate around 51 grams of saturated fat, which is double the recommendation, and in terms of the healthy omegas, he only consumed around 0.61 gram of omega-3, but he ate around 23.8 gram of omega-6s, which massively skewed his omega-6 to 3 ratio. In terms of his minerals and trace elements, he was generally okay across the board, although his sodium intake was high and his selenium was a little bit on the low side. His vitamin intake was largely good across the board, but given the amount of food that he consumed, that's no real surprise. As a quick macro breakdown, 34% of his calories come from carbs, 35% of his calories come from protein, and around 30% of his calories come from fats. So what can be said about that day of eating? Well, quite simply, it was massively excessive. It falls well outside any health organisation's recommendations, and it was very heavy on animal foods. There was also very little in the way of diversity in fruits and vegetables, and particularly greens. And if you enjoyed this video, then you're certainly going to want to watch this video. And the only other thing that's left for me to say is to remember to look after your body because it's the only place you have to live. And I'll see you next time.